Welcome to Fostering Blooms, the podcast where we dig deep into gardening and all the ways it can enrich your home and life.
Together, we'll explore every aspect of gardening the organic way, keeping it simple, accessible, and fun.
Whether you're a seasoned gardener or just getting your hands in the dirt, we're here to share the tips and insights you need to grow something truly special. I'm Shannon Foster Boleen.
And I'm Caitlin Blum, and we're two friends on a mission to cultivate beauty, creativity, and connection through everything we grow.
This is Fostering Blooms. Today, we are going to talk about plant families and why they are very much like the mob.
Ooh, bum, bum, bum. I don't know if that's a mob sound.
It is today. I don't think
we got some gang wars going on in the garden.
That's right. We really do, though.
Yeah.
It's funny because I was thinking about how plant families really are like, you wouldn't put the Colombos and the Gambinos together, right? Like, you wouldn't sit them at the same table like it was no big deal. It'd be a big deal. Like, if they came together, it'd be a big deal, right?
Yeah, someone's not coming out of there alive.
Exactly.
And it's the same for your plants.
Yeah, and there's some debate about some of that, so we want to talk about that as well. But most farmers are definitely treating their crops like mob families.
Absolutely. There's lots of tradition rooted in these families.
There's a long history of crop rotation.
Absolutely.
And if you are a new gardener, or even if you're an experienced gardener, crop rotation is a big topic and it's kind of sometimes hard to understand. So this is like a fun and easy way to kind of think about it.
It's kind of a pain in the ass. I'm like, what can go behind what? I always have to look it up, and it's a pain in the ass to have to think about this.
All the time, yeah.
Yeah.
When I first started gardening, it's the first time I made a map for crop rotation. And my friends at work, they're like, you have a map for your garden? Of course you do.
Nerd.
Like, they were telling me, yeah, like, nerd. But you really do need to plan. And it doesn't matter if you're doing pots, raised beds, in ground. It really doesn't matter. You want to think about some of these things. So let's talk about our mob families. We've got a little name for each family. And basically, they have their own strengths and their own enemies and their own little shady dealings that they've got going on. So we'll cover that. The first family, and I'm going to do the Latin names, is the Solanaceae family, also known as
the nightshades.
Yeah, the nightshades.
The nightshades.
That's
I don't know. We feel
maybe
like
they're doing like karate too. I don't know. But the nightshade family is your tomatoes, peppers, potatoes, and eggplants, right? And a lot of people have heard about the nightshade. Mm-hmm. There's been more talk about food allergies and things like that, and some people have allergies to nightshade plants. But as far as in the garden, the nightshades, the problems with them can be soil-borne pathogens. And
what kind of baggage does the nightshade family drag around?
Well, like blight and nematodes. Nobody wants those. The way to head some of that off at the pass is to avoid planting them in the same location for 2 to 3 years. For example, in my garden, I very intentionally set up 4 sets of double arches. I've got tomatoes here in year 1, and now they're here in year 2, and then they're going to go over there in year 3, and then they're going to come over here in year 4.
Look at you trying to keep all the mob families happy.
Yes, ma'am. You want to really think about your nightshades and what things you don't want to plant them with. We're going to go through the families first. So let's talk about the next family, the Brassicaceae.
Or the crucifer crew. So what do we have? Those are your broccolis, cauliflowers, cabbage, your kale.
Yeah.
I feel like I am better at remembering those as a family. When I think of the,
Right.
the Brassica family, I really do think of those together. They're kind of easy to remember.
And you said the Brassica family, which is the shortened version of the Latin name. And
Yes.
the one thing with the Brassica family that makes it easier to remember is that they tend to have big leaf structures. Like things we didn't say that would be included in that would also be arugula. If we remember my flea beetle trauma that I had this year, the crucifer crew had a hit job come after them.
Flea beetles.
I don't know. We need to give the pests a family name. Okay. So what's their baggage?
So they've got some baggage that would include, you've already mentioned one, flea beetles, cabbage moths. They look so pretty fluttering around, but you see those little holes in your beautiful cabbage leaves?
Yep.
It's from those puppies. They're
Yeah.
taking a little munch, as well as clubroot. I don't think I've encountered clubroot.
No, I haven't either, but I don't want to.
Let's not find out.
No, thank you.
No, thank you. So how do we combat this crucifer crew issues is don't follow one brassica with another. So if you have kale somewhere, don't follow it with cabbage or something else. You need to pick something from another family.
Correct.
They're leaving their residual mob issues there.
Right.
Don't compound the issue. Switch it out. Switch out that turf with another family.
Yeah, exactly. There are some families it's better to have come into that territory after the other one leaves. So we'll talk about that.
That's right. You want another family in that spot in the garden after
Yes.
they're done bolting.
Yeah, after you pull them out and get done. The next one is Fabaceae, which is
Also known as the legume syndicate.
I love
The legume syndicate. Watch out.
whenever we talk about legumes, like people know usually that that's beans and peas and lentils. So the great thing about anything in the legume family is that
Peanuts.
oh yeah, technically you're right.
Who's
Yes,
growing
ma'am.
peanuts?
Woo, yeah, right. For all the peanut farmers out there that didn't already know this, fixes nitrogen in the soil, which is great, which is
Yeah.
really, really great. And that is something that's hugely beneficial about that family. The thing about it is that you don't want to follow beans after beans. I am taking a little bit of a risk because I did some snap peas this year up my trellises. I mean, they've only been in the ground for like 3 months, but I am going to follow them with beans. After that, I'll rotate it and have a different crop in there. So I'm not worried in such a short period, but I wouldn't follow them like year after year.
Switch it out and let another plant benefit from the nitrogen that they've fixed in the ground.
Yes, and there's
know?
certain crops that benefit most from that, which we will touch on. The potential baggage with beans is you can get certain pests. You can get aphids. There is a bean aphid. I haven't really had that so much with beans.
I have not grown a lot of beans. You've definitely done more than I have. And you know what? Let me ask. I feel like I'm asking a dumb question, but this is the space to do it. Green beans would obviously be in this.
Yes, green beans are in this.
And so I don't think I've had a lot of pests that have messed with my snap peas,
Yeah.
green peas, or green beans. And that's kind of the extent of beans and peas that I've done. You've done
Yeah.
a little bit more. You're going to be doing a little bit
I'm
more.
going to do a lot more. Hopefully, I'll get them in the ground. The green beans, you can definitely get some like rustiness on it. Usually, I don't get the powdery mildew with them, but theoretically, you could. And then also bean beetles.
Mm-hmm.
I've never had anything with snap peas that have been an issue with pests.
Yeah.
I really haven't had any pest issues with green beans before either, and I've grown several varieties. I had some shelling beans, and they looked a little ragged by the end of the season, but nothing problematic. But still, you don't want to follow them with one another. You would want to follow with another family. The next and final family is the Cucurbitaceae, which
Whatever
is
you
a
say.
mouthful, or cucurbits, also known as the
gourd family.
yes.
And that's pretty self-explanatory, but it might not be.
Right.
There's one in here that, you think of gourds. There's something else in this family you wouldn't think belonged. This is the black sheep of the family, is cucumbers.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You know?
Well, cucurbit
Cucurbit.
There
Get out
you
of
go.
here.
Get out of here.
Get out of here. So, I mean, I think of gourds,
Yeah.
obviously, in general. Melons, pumpkins, your acorn squash, butternut squash.
And your regular squash and zucchini.
Your regular squash and cucumbers are part of that too. And so that is actually not a very self-explanatory family that I always think about all of them together. But
Right.
when you say cucumber and their beautiful Latin word, you know, that makes sense.
The good thing about Latin is that it's no one's first language. So
we don't
even if I
even
said
know.
it horribly, can you really say that I totally said it wrong?
You know what's sad is I took Latin in college and I still don't pronounce the
Yeah.
names. Anyways, what is the problem with this gourd
Yeah.
family? I feel like they're the most baggagey of families. In my garden, at least they are. So powdery mildew, vine borers, squash bugs.
And cucumber beetles.
They're just, God, they're a problematic bunch.
Here's the thing with tomatoes is the thing I worry most about with tomatoes is blight, followed by blossom end rot, which usually blossom end rot you can control by not having infrequent, inconsistent waterings. Like if you handle watering right, you're usually going to be okay. So blight is kind of the bigger issue that I worry about with them. And then those stupid leaf hoppers have come along and they didn't really wreck them too bad. But with cucumbers, I will always get cucumber beetles. I don't care if it's the first year planting where I am, they will find that plant. And with squash, any kind of squash or zucchini, I will always get squash bugs. I don't care if you've never planted in that space before and they don't even seem like they exist in that area. So it's really a matter of like trying to manage those plants really early.
Yeah.
Airflow is really good for the powdery mildew. That is one thing you can do. And there are some sprays you can use that are organic to kind of help with that early on. But at some point, you just get tired of doing it. You know?
I'm tired of dealing with your shit.
Yeah. Yeah. And another thing you can do too, and this is important, is succession planting. Like I've planted some cucumbers now. I'm going to plant some behind it. Then I'll probably plant like a couple more. And then I can rip out any vines that are getting kind of chewed up and just totally trash it. Don't put it in the compost. Like you got to get rid of it completely so you're not leaving those bugs out to multiply.
That's a great to go about it because I'm trying to limp along this cucumber plant with all this powdery mildew on it because I want to pump out a few more cukes out of it. But if you're succession planning, you know, hey, I can rip this out. It's looking gangly. I got another one coming up. I'll apply the correct applications for the pests that I've seen on my current one or the issues.
Yeah.
And you can combat it. So that's another way. That's great.
Mm-hmm. And one thing with cucumbers this year too is I have one of my arches is in an area that gets afternoon shade. I'm interested to see how that does because cucumbers actually don't mind afternoon shade. They don't like a ton of afternoon direct sun. So I'm interested to see if it'll help with powdery mildew, if it helps with any of that. Sometimes I feel like they get a little bit of, I don't know if it's a leaf scorch, but kind of burn a little bit or white.
You know what? I agree. And I think back to the first year that we were at our home in Newmarket. I put chicken wire up and they went up a side of the building and it got afternoon shade. Those are the best cucumbers I ever grew.
Yeah.
And they didn't get that scorch.
Yeah.
They got powdery mildew towards the end of the season, but I've never had part of the cucurbit family not get it. So I'm very excited to see how yours do with the afternoon shade.
I am too. So the reason that these mob families that we have, right, these guys, is that a lot of it is about pathogens building up in the soil from repeated planting of one family in the same place. Pests that kind of haunt those families, those problems will overwinter there. And then it also depletes the nutrients that that particular plant needs. So if you plant tomatoes, which are heavy feeders, in the same place year after year, it's going to really deplete the nutrients, which is why typically it is good to plant peas or beans after tomatoes. It fixes that nitrogen back in the soil. Also, brassicas are really heavy feeders, like your cabbages and stuff like that. You can plant them after beans. The beauty of nature is it got all this really figured out. Like certain plants are going to do better after others. I mean, will your cucurbits fail if you put them after tomatoes? Probably not, but they're not going to be as good a crop, to be honest. So I never follow tomatoes or peppers or anything in that family with anything in the gourd family. Here's a few things of what not to plant after each other and why.
So you're not going to put tomatoes after potatoes. And that's because you're going to be having a Blight City fest.
Yes, you will.
Not Light City, Blight City, all
Right.
over the place. As I am going through these tips, I'm thinking about some of the stuff that I've done in the past and currently where some of my plants are placed. And I might have pooed myself over in some ways. So it'll be interesting to see how I kind of get around that. And by that, I'm talking about the tomatoes that I have at every single trellis. So, you know, where am I going to trellis my tomatoes next year? We'll find out.
Yeah, we'll find out.
I love how you planned ahead. That's genius. So what else do we have? We're not going to do broccoli after cauliflower, clubroot, and aphids. God, aphids.
Ugh.
We hate you. And we're not going to do squash after cucumbers.
Yeah.
Powdery mildew, hello. Holy mother. And I'm going to say this too. I really do try to move my stuff around, but especially the mildew prone things.
Yeah.
And even when I do, they still get it.
Well, we're in such a humid and wet environment here. Even last year when it was drier, it was probably a little bit better, but it still was bad, you
They were
know?
just dry and crispy.
Yeah. Yeah.
But our last thing is beans after beans.
Which I already said I'm breaking that rule just a little bit. But again, I think a lot of these things are like a full season. So we'll see. I mean, I'll find out. Maybe I'll get a really bad bean crop after those peas, but I don't think so. It leads into this huge debate about this anyways, right? A couple things. One is that you see people who are planting super intensive in small raised bed spaces with a lot of things close together anyways, and breaking those spacing rules and also putting things together that maybe they shouldn't be. And we don't have proof of this, but it seems like everything's okay. Or you have people who are really into soil health saying, look, if the soil is healthy enough, then those pathogens and those soil-borne diseases aren't going to grow up in those places.
You can break these rules, but you've got to have great soil. There's a caveat. There's a caveat, I think, to it. And I think I'm trying to play around with it. I have amended my soil more this year than I have ever before. Really put a lot of care into it. And I'm kind of breaking some of these rules. Like I've got squash next to tomatoes. I'm doing some stuff where I'm like, well, it's already there. So I'm really going to see like, how does this affect it? Like, I kind of want to know. Call it just pure curiosity because I got squash on the other side. You have plenty of tomatoes. So,
right,
you know,
it'll work out.
Like this is something I can experiment with. If you have limited space and those are the only plants you have, then I'd heed these rules unless you want to experiment.
Yeah, for sure. And I think for me, part of what I think about is whether you have a lot of space or you have a little space, you really do need to create a plan.
Yeah.
You need to take the time to sit down and say, okay, where am I going to move things over time or where I'm going to plant them anyways, instead of just chucking stuff in a bed. Because first of all, you got to consider spacing, right? Like you got to think about, is it a vine? Can I trellis it? Can I not trellis it? That's what winter is so great for. It's get a cup of tea or coffee, whatever your poison is, sit in there in your comfy, cozy clothes and write out a little map or whatever. And you can do it by seasons. I really think there's 6 growing seasons, not 4 growing seasons. This is not my own brilliant idea. Other people have talked about this as well, and it makes sense to me. I read this amazing book, which I have to find the name of it and I'll put it in the show notes. It's an biointensive farming, and I think they're out of French Canada. And they just did such a great job talking about these families and how they rotate through them. And I think when it's your livelihood and you're relying on these things, that there's obviously some generational knowledge there that's saying, hey, this isn't a good idea. So I'm more on the side of have great soil and go ahead and rotate, have great soil, and also some things probably won't grow as well together as companions, right? I am a little more of keep the mob families apart, and Kate's willing to risk letting the gambinos and the
I
And,
want to ruffle some feathers and see what happens.
She's going to bring them to the table and see what
Figure it out. Work it out.
Will there be a mob war or not?
No.
But it'll be good to know. I think also what's so cool is that there are other things that we didn't mention, like lettuce, onions, carrots, radishes, beets, garlic, that will work really well with each of these families. Some of them don't work as well together. But one thing about lettuce that I love is you can pretty much put it with anything.
It's pretty flexible. As is your herbs too. I think, some herbs do better than others, beneficial. Not only you can coexist, but beneficial. Thank God there's some wiggle room to put between these. So you have options.
Yeah.
Options, I think, than you realize, where you can incorporate some rotation and be okay.
Yeah. So like my potatoes, I have lettuce planted in between on one side, and I have cabbage on the other side in between the potatoes, because it turns out potatoes and cabbage do really well together.
I did the same thing. I have cabbage on one end of the bed and potatoes on the other end, because I planned ahead and knew they would do well together.
We'll do another episode on companion planting, but I think it all starts with just a simple concept of understanding these families of plants that you have and their differences, and why they should not always share the same territory or come after another family when they've been planted.
Great way to put it. So much fun. And now I'm going to remember this better.
Yes.
Now.
All right, well, let's go get dirty.
All right, let's go grow, baby.
Thanks for listening to Fostering Blooms. If this episode inspired you, send it to a friend who's ready to ditch bland grocery store radishes and get spicy in the garden with us. We'd love it if you left us a 5-star review. That helps other people like you find our podcast. And don't forget to tag us on Instagram when your blooms show off. Until next time, let's go grow, baby.